And welcome back to episode 10,
Is it 10?
of the SAYWATTS Podcast. And this is a very special episode of the podcast
Post-birth.
because we are no longer a family of two.
No.
We
family
are
of 5.
We are no longer a family of 5
We're
plus
a
2
family of
cats in
6.
Spain. We are now a family of 8. One of them being another human being, a baby girl by the name
Of
of
Storie.
Watts. How strange and special does it feel to say that?
We're a mum and dad.
We are mum and dad, so if we look absolutely shattered, haggard,
We are.
I've just had 3 coffees back to back before this podcast to give you some kind of oomph
To give you some kind of life.
to speak. I've not left the house for 10 days and I don't intend to for another 10 years.
It's not that you don't.
Everything
It's not
is-
that you don't intend to. It's fucking impossible.
Everything is so much harder than we ever imagined.
You know, when people say like, just you wait. I felt like telling everybody, like I said in the last podcast, to literally piss off, because I just thought, like, how hard is it going to be to have a bath or have a shower? Like, these people exaggerate. Jesus Christ, you were not wrong.
No,
And
whenever,
it's weird though, because it's like there's a lot to do, and yes, it's hard, but it also isn't hard at the same time, because you know you've got to do it. It's not the same hard as, you know, when you don't want to do something because you're tired or you're hungover. It's different because you know you've got to. Like, where you don't have an option, you have this kind of, do you know what I mean?
yeah, I know
It's
what
a
you're saying.
different kind of hard. Like, there's a lot to do that doesn't revolve around you, but it's also
Yeah.
amazing at the same time.
I would say as well, like, I don't want to say that it's extremely hard because there's 2 of us. We both
Yeah.
have a lot of time freedom. We have our parents. We have Tay's
a lot of
parents.
help.
Have a lot of help. Like, our setup couldn't be any, I would say, easier for parents, but it's still fucking hard.
Yeah, we've been saying, we said from literally day one out of the hospital, we've got a new appreciation for mums,
Like,
because you just can't, like, you know, me and Jack are quite similar in that our parents with our mums were very, very like mums, and our dads were very much like the workers. You know, they went out, probably like a lot of parents, but
Mainly in the traditional days.
yeah,
years ago.
but our dads
Sounds
very much
traditional.
like, you know, they're always away for work, always working late, not really that involved in like the baby days.
No,
and
for me,
it's,
my dad was mainly when I got to like a teenager. He was working a lot. That's
Yeah.
just how it was.
They're providing.
It weren't like abnormal. It just
not at all.
is what it was.
But you're like, yeah, I can see why he left and went and did all that work and stayed till 10 p.m.
Did overtime on top of overtime.
Yeah, because I don't know, when you're younger, you think, oh, it's, you know, it's much harder for the man. You know, they've got to go out and work and mum's at home. And it's like, God, you just don't even realise how much mums do. And then we were even speaking about, you know, single mums, like, the level of appreciation just goes up even a millionfold, because
Yeah.
doing it on your own, I know that some people will have help from parents and things like that, and have help from their partner if they're not together, but you know,
And
at any time being a single parent, I don't just mean being a single parent, but like being alone in the house.
But also, 2 and 3 kids, like when we ventured to the shop and I just see a parent with like 2 or 3 kids, I'm like, you know, I felt like just going to applaud them.
Yeah.
And like, well done.
Yeah.
The kids are like doing what kids do and you're like,
Yeah,
fair play.
you know,
But we say that with Jess because it is absolutely unbelievable.
it is. It absolutely is. It's unbelievable. It's a whole new way of life. Like, it's crazy that one day you give birth and then the next day it's like your whole world flips upside down. I don't mean in a negative sense. I mean in a sense of like, wow, you've got to now raise this little person. You've got to keep them alive. You've got to learn all of these new things. And it's like, even if you have amazing parents, which we do, and an amazing support network, it's like you still really don't know what you're doing when you go back. It's like we came home and we were like, right, what do we do now then? It's like you've got to learn about feeding and how they
everything
feed
now
and,
I triple check with like Google, YouTube, check with you, like just anything, like when I'm holding the baby, when I'm putting the baby to bed, like there's just everything. You're like, well, if I get it wrong, it's like could be catastrophic.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not worth
It's not. And do you know what as well?
Not checking.
The thing is that our parents, our mum's generation, everything. I mean, things are different from people who had babies 5 or 10 years ago. Our mums had babies 25 plus years ago. Things are so different. You know, like my mum would have like hung things on the cart and put a teddy bear in the cart and all of these kind of things. And the way that maybe she even like winded the baby wouldn't be recommended now, or the way that she fed, or just like there's so many different things that have changed and that continue to change all the time. And it's like this, there's so many things where I'm like, oh no, mum, can't do that. You know, if she's doing something a certain way, I'm like, oh no, that's not in this and you can't do this. And she's like, what? And I'm like, that's what it says. Like, it's just so different. So you really do have to like learn for yourself. You can't really lean on them in that respect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, yeah, totally get that.
You just, it's basically like going back to school and you've got to just learn all of these things. But what I will say is that after, I'd say like day 4, you don't get a routine. Obviously there's no routine with a newborn. I mean, you might have, we don't. But it's like, it does start to like, oh, okay, I know how to, I know what she might be crying for now. Like, we've got a checklist, haven't we?
Yeah, we're on day 10 now. And
day
I would
12.
say day 12 now. Every single day it gets like way easier. Like the first day,
I wouldn't say it gets easier. I'd say every day is very different.
I'd say, okay, I feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
First day I was living on edge, I was anxiety, like, right, checking everything. Mm-hmm. Then day 2, you know, you're just really unsure. And then each day that goes by, like, and then you can like relax and enjoy it more. Even the way I'm like lifting them up. I've held like 2 babies in my whole life.
That first day we were like,
and
like she was like a glass. Made of glass.
And you're like, oh, even the change in the clothes when I was in the hospital, I was like, oh, you know, I'm bending her arm back. Is she going to dislocate her shoulder? And the midwife's like, no, you know, she's quite floppy. There's, you know, more steady than you think. Whereas I'm like, oh, no, this ain't going to work.
That's what I was exactly the same.
Her shoulder's going to snap off and all that kind of thing. So you just, I've never done it before.
Yeah. And now we're a lot more flexible with it.
And then you can relax and purely enjoy it.
Yeah.
Just the fact that is a 50% me and you.
Yeah. It's very, what I would say, it's a lot harder to process than you think. I think as well, and we will go into like the birth story. But I think coming back as a mum, I don't know whether you felt like this, but I felt like this is very, very hard to digest. It's very hard to digest that I've now got a baby in my arms who was inside my stomach. Like, that's bizarre in itself. Then you've got all of the birth that you're thinking about, and it's like there's just so much to process. And then you look at them and thinking, this is made from me and this is made from Jack. And like, then you're like, where did that 10 months go? That just went so quickly. And it's just a very, I don't know when it like processes, but even now I'm like, it's just not, I can't process it.
No, and I would agree with that. And also, like, all of the years that it's took, it all just seems
like that never happened.
Everything seems like a blur.
Yeah.
The whole previous, even the birth, even finding out the gender, everything. My whole life just feels like I'm in a blur.
Yeah. I feel like I've got brain fog.
Yeah, I've got massive brain fog, and I'm waiting for it just to get more clear. You just sort of like swooshing through each day, like the fact that she's already 12 days old. I mean, I don't even know where that's gone.
No, I don't.
Like 12 days.
And one thing I'll say is that every day is very different. But what I would say is that you get to know your baby more. I feel like we're getting to know her more. And like I said, we've got a bit of a checklist. And for us, the checklist is like, you know, if she's crying, it's like, okay, she either needs feeding, or she needs winding, or she needs her nappy changing, or what was the other one? There's another one. It's mainly feeding, nappy changing, winding, isn't it?
Yeah.
They're like the 3 things.
Yeah, because it'd be a poo, wee, feeding, or she just needs winding. She's just uncomfortable and wants a bit of love.
And that's our that's of like little checklist for now. But then it does get to a point, our midwife says, where that there will be no reason and they'll just be crying. We're trying that. We're absolutely trying
They'll just cry apparently, and you know they're so helpful. They give you little books and graphs and all sorts, and it actually explains, which, you know, I never knew any of this kind of thing, that a baby's crying, they will cry because they want something. And they're also not playing any like funny buggers. They're not playing any games. Whereas when they get to a certain age, they can actually be having
their brain actually isn't developed enough to be naughty at this point.
They're literally like animalistic. If they're crying, it's because something's not right. But then they can actually get to a stage after, I think, between 2 and 6 months, I don't know, 2 weeks, where they can just cry for periods of up to like 5-6 hours. And it shows you like after week 4, they can cry for no reason. So I think that would be quite hard because I mean, what do you do?
Because you want to, when they cry, you just want to soothe them. But if you can't actually soothe them, it's going to be difficult.
I guess you just keep going around the checklist. And if they're not, then you're like, okay, that's
Until
it. But then you could they could be ill.
Yeah,
they could be saying, hey, I'm ill. And then you're like, oh, I missed that one off.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one because it's kind of the same with dogs, isn't it? They can't actually speak. They can't actually... I can imagine that parents are relieved when the kids can actually tell them, what they need and communicate with them because...
But then also, a lot of my friends who have older kids say like, the newborn bit's a breeze, isn't it? It's just chill, they sleep all day. It's easy. Oh, God, I wish I could go back to that. It was the best.
Yeah.
So we're embracing that. And I guess because when you get to like walking or crawling age, you've got to keep your eye on them.
Yeah.
Whereas at the minute, we can put them in the cart next to me. They're there.
Yeah.
And she can sleep for 3-4 hours, whatever, 2 hours. And you just sort of get on with some work and do some bits.
Yeah.
So
let's go to the whole home birth situation and the whole birth situation.
Yeah, so we've got quite a lot to say on this.
Yeah, we might
usually everything sort of runs out after about an hour. So we'll try and tell it in detail, but not Jack and Taylor's detail because we can waffle on for hours. Especially me. I can talk for 3 hours.
No, I'm just the same.
I can say a lot, but not actually say anything. If that makes sense.
Right, so let's start from the beginning. I basically I had a very long, what they call, is it latent labour phase?
Yeah. So we didn't know that at the start. So you had your first sort of contraction instinct Sunday evening.
Yeah. I was
Monday morning about 1 a.m.
So this was when I was a week over. So I was 41 weeks. Is that right? No. By the end of it, I was 41 weeks.
It was 41 weeks.
So I was 41 weeks and I'd started to get a little bit of a contraction going on about 1:30 in the night. This is in the Monday. And that was manageable. It was like a period pain in my back, and I'd started to like time them. I'd woke Jack up like, I think I'm having my first contraction.
So we
were very
absolutely
excited.
Buzzing at this
point. And I've missed a point, is that a few hours prior to that, I'd actually had I'd already had 2 sweeps and nothing had happened. And at this point, I'd had my first bit of bloody show. I'd got on the toilet, I seen the blood, and I've never been more excited to see blood in my life.
That was Sunday night, and we were like, right, it's happening.
And I said to Jack, oh my God, like I'm losing my mucus plug. I've got a bit of a bloody show, which is like a sign of like labour happening, impending. And I was so excited. Then obviously woke up at 1:30 in the night and my contraction had started, but only very small. And then by basically the Monday evening, about 10:30, I'd started to feel some like cramps in my back and stuff. We then started to go into what we thought was full-blown labour. I mean, like we were up till 3 in the morning, something like that.
Yeah, so obviously if you've not had a child before, I didn't know any of this. Basically, your labour start, like you have contractions and they can be like an hour long, every hour, and they can just be like period pains. So the midwives say, look, just do normal life for that. So we had that all Monday day till about 8 at night. And at 8 at night, Tay had her first one that really shocked her and sort of kind of like made you a bit tearful, like it was that painful. But they were only like every 30 minutes.
Yeah. And
apparently like pre-labour is anything where the contractions are longer than like 3.5 minutes or 3 minutes. So our plan was to get from the 30 minutes down to 3.5 minutes,
which then meant the home birth team could come out and we could basically start the process of giving birth. That's when you're considered in active labour.
And then from there, you supposedly this is average, then have about 4 to 8 hours of like pushing active for their baby to come out. So our whole focus on the Monday was like, right, let's get to active labour.
So we were in the bath. I was having the contractions in the bath. Jack was helping me with the contractions. We, set it out quite nice and stuff. I had my candle on. I had my water bottle. And we were, I was getting through the contractions quite well. They were painful, I must admit, by the Monday night. But we were getting through them. Jack had the contraction timer on, so we were tracking everything. We were getting in touch with the home birth team, weren't we?
What was great was basically the end was in sight. So they started at 30 minutes, and let's say you had 5 of them. It went to 25 minutes, then 20, then 15.
It was coming down quite rapidly.
Quick. So although Tay was in a lot of pain, I was like, do you know what? By this time it was 5 in the morning, Tuesday morning, and she'd got down to 4.5 minutes. And then 4 minutes, and then it's got to stay like that for an hour or so to be an average. And she's got down, it was 4 minutes average. I was like, oh my God. So I rang the home birth team and said, we're at 4 minutes. Shall I fill up the pool? Do you want to bring the gas and air? We're ready. And they're like, no, not yet. You've got to get to 3.5. So I said to Tay, we're flying. I said, look, you can do this. You killed it.
And I thought, even though it was painful, this is going well. And I can see how this is coming down, and I felt very comfortable with okay, we're so close now, and then the home birth team are going to be here,
and then you've only got 4 to 8 hours of
I'm going to get in the pool.
Your baby's here. We're like, oh my God, this is crazy.
I was like, oh my God, we're having our baby tonight. This is insane. And also what I have to say is the bath was an amazing pain relief. When I was out the bath versus in the bath, it was completely different.
That was better than
the water was
machine. TENS machine.
TENS machine didn't do anything
to
for me.
The bath
it really
is
didn't.
The one.
Yeah, and the TENS machine helps a lot of people, but it really just didn't help me. My contractions were so painful, but they actually only got worse. So Tuesday, after that, so we got to about 4 minutes, and then I was like, Jack, do you know what? I'm going to get out of the bath. I've been in here for a few hours now, and I feel like I want to change the scenery. So we got out, and then we had a couple of contractions that were the same, and then we had one that was you were like, that's weird. Where's it gone?
I said we're up to 15 minutes.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then it basically just continued to go up.
It went, it went to 7, then 8, then 9, then 10. And then it just sat at between 10, 15 and 20 for the next few hours.
Yeah.
So
then basically we had a whole night no sleep because I was still having contractions. They were still painful, but they were just, quite far apart. I'd learned that I actually had to be in a standing position to have the contraction because the lying down was so painful. But obviously, because I was so heavily pregnant, the getting up and everything, Jack would have had to stay up with me all night to push me up, to get me on my leg, to get me on my feet. I just basically gave up with the sleep. So I didn't have any sleep. So obviously the Monday night I didn't have any sleep. Tuesday night I didn't have any sleep. We weren't getting any further.
Oh, that was, so that was till Tuesday 5 a.m.
Yeah.
Then I sort of got a couple of hours because you said, look, it's gone back out to 15 minutes. And then the whole of Tuesday, so I woke up, I don't know, midday or whatever. Then the whole of Tuesday, the whole day, it just stuck at 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And the pain of the contractions got 100 times worse than when it was the start. It got to a point where... Do you
know what's weird is that I can't remember the pain now. All I remember it being is absolute hell on earth.
It was in the back. You get them in certain places, your front, your back. Tay was getting them in the back, which is apparently, I don't know, a terrible place to have them. And obviously, she couldn't ever sit down and relax. So whenever she sat down, I'd have to come and get her up. So what we were doing is, they were pretty bang on 10 minutes. So I said, look, after 8 minutes, I'll get you up. You stand up, you have the contraction, you go back down. But this was literally a thing for 20 hours because it would get to a point where Tay was screaming and crying as the contraction would happen. And then as soon as it's happened, she's just back to normal.
Yeah.
And then you got 8 minutes, try and get some sleep. She'd sit down and then you get up and then it would be screaming and crying. And you're like, this is the weirdest thing ever.
And then all of this, is now at a point where 48 hours, no sleep. And the pain, obviously, when you're really tired and your body's completely run out, the pain is so intense. And
gets worse.
You're also going deluded. And by this point, and this is something I'm not afraid to share, is that I was actually debating my whole pregnancy. I was thinking, why have I done this to myself? I can't believe I've done this. This pain is unimaginable. And I started to go delirious, didn't I?
Yeah, you were like crying your eyes out, saying this is the worst decision I've ever made.
Yeah,
I hate myself for doing this.
Yeah,
I
mean, this is someone who's, you know, tried for nearly 7 years, had IVF. The pain was that imaginable, and my body was that exhausted that I was like, I can't believe what I've done here.
You've just got Joe, when you like don't have any sleep, you just start going weird, don't you?
I was going really weird. No. And so I got to a point where actually we have like a little, if you follow me on Instagram, you know the layout of my bedroom, which is weird. Why do you know the layout of my bedroom? This is how much of an overshare I am. But we've got like a little feeding nook, and we've got like a little chaise longue thing. And basically Jack was in bed. I said, look, there's no point in us both being tired. You might as well go to sleep. You can't do anything for me. You know, he could rub my back or whatever, but I'd rather him get some sleep. I actually just sat upright on the feeding nook and basically was just sat there waiting for the contractions to come, bottle of water, and I was just in unimaginable pain. That was like, and on that night I said to you, I can't deal with this anymore. We've got to go to hospital. You got to ring the hospital and see if we can get any painkillers or something from them. And they said, you can come in and you can get some codeine, and you can do that every 4 hours.
And they said the benefit of that is if you can get sleep, then you'll get recharged, and that's all we wanted was Tay to sleep. So we went in. So
we had to drive to the Leicester Royal Infirmary, which is about a half an hour drive, and obviously my contractions were every 10 minutes, and having them sat down in the car, I was crying my eyes out every time one came, because I could feel it. You have this like surge, and then you know it's like, coming. I'm like, oh no. I was like, it's coming, and I'm like this. Oh no. And Jack's like, not again.
To be fair, I did most of the contractions with you. I was like, ready, breathe.
And we used the hypnobath and breathing, which did help.
Because that helps, like, you relax your shoulders, you breathe in for 4, get the oxygen in, try and help it.
That did as much as it possibly could.
As much as it did. The first day and the second, well, I don't know how many days, but that took us to like Wednesday night.
Yeah. So anyway, I had these 3 contractions in the car on the way to the Royal Infirmary. Then we got lost in the hospital, ended up in like the underground bit of the hospital. Like, it's just like the worst timing ever. Then we finally find the place where we can go and get codeine, and we expected that we could bring some back with us, and they were like, oh no, you just get the tablet and then you can come back for every 4 hours, but you can't take it back with you. And we're like, right, okay. So we have the tablet, hoping it's really going to kick in. I'm crying on the way back, having the contractions in the car. I don't get any sleep. It's not done literally anything. And then by the Wednesday morning, I'm literally up. I'm in that, like, walking around the house at like 3 a.m. Jack's in bed. I'm like, stay in bed, get to sleep. And then basically by the late morning of the Wednesday, because we'd held on for so long.
It was actually Wednesday evening, because...
Was it?
Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
It was about 3 or 4 o'clock Wednesday by the time we got to the hospital.
Was it?
Yeah, we rode it out.
I thought it was about 1.
I think it was a bit later than that.
Oh.
It was I can't remember exactly, but we basically rode it out.
And we thought, we've come this far now. Let's just basically keep going. And it
was just stuck on 10. And then when we spoke to the hospital or the home birth team or something, basically it's called a delayed latency pregnancy phase. And they said, well, like, it
can be quite common in first.
Could be common runs. And it could last, it could be 3 days, could be 2 days, could be 5, could be 7.
And we were like,
But as soon as it was that, we're like, nah.
No, we can't do it any longer. But what I was going to say, can you stop interrupting me?
I can't do it. It's giving me horrors.
Right. Let me just have a story. Yeah. So this the last breaking point was basically this Wednesday afternoon or the Wednesday morning, whatever. And obviously at this point, I'm like 3 days, no sleep, 3 nights, no sleep. So I said to Jack, look, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to time it. I'm going to have like 6 minutes sleep, a minute or so to get up, to get over to the, whatever it was, the table, to to keel over, and you help me with my contraction and rub my back, and then we're basically going to just have to repeat that, and I'll get sleeping, because I was so exhausted. The minute my head touched the pillow, I'd go to sleep. Then the alarm would go off for Jack to hoist me up, to get me over to the table, to get ready for the contraction, and then we'd repeat. And we were like, yeah, we were that deluded. We were like, yeah, we'll just build up like the sleep that you've had 6 minutes sleep, and then it'd be like, you've had 12 minutes sleep, you've had 18 minutes sleep, and we'll just keep doing this until you've had a few hours in the bank. Like, this is how delirious we were. We were like, right, yeah, let's do it. And then for some reason, the contractions just seemed to get worse. I was obviously just exhausted. And I just said to Jack, I just give up. I can't do this anymore. I literally cannot do this. Like, I think we need to go into hospital. And at that point, you were like, yeah.
Yeah, I was very, I wanted a home birth. I wanted to go to plan. But at the end of the day, we were willing to change I think it just didn't look right. Tay was absolutely shattered. And I thought, we both made the decision. So let's go and get some help. I'm pretty lost at this point. You're absolutely shattered. To be fair, I was still knackered. Like, I'd had a few hours sleep, but even I was pretty delirious. And we thought, I think it was the unknown. Do you know, if someone said, right, you probably have the baby tonight, you'd probably like try and hang on. But the fact that it could have been another 2 days, and by the time we actually found out later on, another day later, you're still only 3 days dilated, 3 centimeters. You definitely would have been at least another 2 days.
And by that point, no.
So we got into the hospital. They were great. They instantly took over and said, look, here's a room for you. Really, really nice private room. You got your personal midwife that stays in there 24/7.
Yeah.
They hook Tay up. They hook the baby up. Check that the baby's not stressed. Check that the heartbeat's okay. And do you know what? I actually had a massive, massive weight off my mind, because I felt like I was getting assistance. It was like a deep, dark place. Like, I'm not going to say like all pregnancy is terrible, because the first day, the first sort of 24 hours.
Babe, not pregnancy, birth.
Sorry. Yeah. We were absolutely smashing it, and we were like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. So,
and that's normally,
and that is
not normally, but for a lot of people, that's how it goes. Like, you get into that, and if the contraction had gone that way and then we'd had birth that night, it would have been like, wow.
We would have been like, this is the best thing ever. Pregnancy is amazing. Complete positive birth experience. Probably would have had it in the pool. Unbelievable. So I think it was just the delayed time. Then it was like, Joe, we need help. So they were absolutely fantastic. And then
I think if I could have slept, it would have been a lot different. But I don't. I think many people sleep through contractions, so it's probably not a thing. But anyway, we got into the hospital, and I said, look, I just need something now to help me with this pain. The contraction's still coming in 10 minutes. I was crying every time I contracted. Like, what can you do? And they were like, right, I had a sweep. The third sweep was a sweep. I had a real big bloody show after. And I was like, wow, it's starting to move. And then I had pethidine, which, oh my God, made me feel so crazy. But that still didn't get rid of the contraction pain. And it wasn't till actually I had an epidural that I could then actually go to sleep. And then I basically had like a full day's worth of sleep by the time that we were around to like push in. And in between that, I'd had like a hormonal drip and loads of other things. I'd also had my waters broken for me. So basically I had an induction and an epidural. I basically had everything. So I went from having this home birth with fairy lights and this big blue pool and relaxing music.
Deep breathing.
Yeah, Lionel Richie dancing in the ceiling on my playlist, to literally having every drug in the hospital.
But do you know what? It was needed, because they broke the waters, they did the sweep. They waited 4 hours, 6 hours, still checked Tay, and she was still only 3 centimeters dilated. Mm-hmm. So that's when they gave her the oxytocin, which is kind of like the induction or a further induction. Yeah. And I think it was maybe like 10 o'clock Wednesday night by the time that was in play. Tay was completely chilled at this point because she couldn't feel anything. So that was a relief. And then we had a midwife in there, so it allowed me to go sleep on the floor. And then they said, right, we're going to wake you up at 4 a.m. 4 a.m. is the big reveal. Hopefully you're 5 centimeters dilated, was their plan. So we were like, oh, wicked. And then they said 4 hours later, hopefully 7. And 4 hours later, hopefully 10. So you're definitely having the baby tomorrow on Thursday. So we were like hyped at this point. We're like, oh my God, we're breezing it. We're killing it. And then...
because even though it was, if you look at the time, it was probably quite a long time. You didn't feel it because we were that tired. All we were doing was sleeping. I mean, you were sleeping as much as I was, weren't you, on that floor? You were asleep for, I felt like, a really long time.
Yeah, I got a good 4 or 5 hours.
It was so enjoyable. It was the nicest sleep
I
ever.
had like a prison mat on the floor, didn't I?
Like a gymnastics mat. Ever. Like a mat that you have at school in PE, like one of them blue mats. That's what you had with a sheet on the floor.
Yeah, it was nice because you had a midwife in there and she had all the bleepers going on, so you can hear all like beep, beep, beep. Like, you felt like, this is so safe. You felt relaxed. And then doctors come in every hour. So you felt really good. And then by like 4 a.m., They're like, right, we're going to check. And they're like, you're 10 centimeters dilated. You are ready to push. And at that point, your mind just goes, what the hell? Like, and they said, I said, how long does it take to push?
Like, we're about to have our baby.
They said you're going to see your baby within probably an hour. So we're like, holy shit. And then I can't remember why we waited, but we waited about half an hour to an hour before you started pushing.
Yeah.
I don't know what, there was a reason for that, but it was like, look, we're just going to wait an hour. Then you're going to start pushing. Obviously, she's got an epidural, so you're not getting that screaming, excruciating pain at the final bit. So that was a bit weird because she's pushing but can't really feel anything.
I couldn't feel anything. Nothing. No pain.
Which actually is a bit tricky because then you can't actually feel to push.
Yeah, because it's like when you're pushing a poo, you just really know how to get it out because you can really feel the weight. You know what I mean? Whereas, trying to push a baby out, which is a lot bigger than a poo, it was really, and you can't feel a thing. It's really hard. But you thought, I'm definitely having a dump right now. I'm like, the amount that I am squeezing, I'm definitely like, there was definitely 100%. There must have been a poo at some point there. But we pushed for an hour and a half and nothing was happening. And then they got the doctors in to say, like, right, let's have a little quick scan and see the position of the baby and see where we're at. And basically the baby was on, the head was diagonal. So it was like she was down, but her head was diagonal. So she wouldn't have been able to come out. So they were like, okay, at this point, the only thing that we can do is obviously like forceps delivery or the sucky cup to try and get her out. And then if none of that works, we have to be able to consent C-section. Because if we're down there and we can't get the baby out and we'll have to perform a C-section to get her out. So at this point, I was very calm, wasn't I? Yeah. I was very chilled. I was like, yeah, do what you've got to do. They gave me more meds, got me prepared. They went through all of obviously the things that you need to go through and that you need to know. And then they were like, right, it's time to go down to theatre then. And, Jack had to go and get his scrubs on and meet in the hallway. And then off we went into the theatre room. And I was trying to be very, very positive and like not look at Jack because I was emotional at this point. We knew that we were probably very close to meeting the baby. But also like this is like the complete opposite to everything I thought it was going to be. And at that point, got on a lot of meds and whatnot. So I was feeling a little bit tearful and a little bit emotional. And I couldn't even look at you, could I?
No, I had to wait on my own for 15 minutes while they gave Tay loads of anaesthetic and drugs and things like that.
They put like all the freeze spray on me and then I think they were like touching bits and saying, can you feel this? And I was like, no, obviously to make sure that you're numb. And then I feel like that bit went really quickly then. They were like, they made me push a few times first to see what I could do. And then obviously did what they needed to do. And I think within maybe 5 or so pushes, and along with the forceps, we didn't use the sucky cup thing, the baby's head was out and then the rest of it was out. And then they handed her over to me. And because my whole body was obviously completely numb, I couldn't even hold her. I was like shaking. My teeth were chattering from all the adrenaline and stuff. And I was like, oh, like you're going to have to hold her, Jack. Because I felt like I was going to drop her. Obviously stitched me up and everything. And then out we went. And that's how.
It was a very strange feeling for me. They popped me on a little stool right next to Tay.
Yeah, that was my point of view from in the theatre room when we delivered her.
So I had to wait outside for 10, 15 minutes first. And then when they came in, there was like 8 doctors. It was in a theatre. And then they popped me on a little stool and said, just sit there. So I literally like sat there. Tay looked absolutely fucked with all of these medication. And then they've got obviously going down there. And I could see them like, they were obviously cutting Tay. So from where I could see, I was kind of like at an angle. I weren't down the bottom end, but I was like...
Thank God.
Could
they say it's like watching your favourite pub get knocked down.
I could see them like, they're cutting. I could see blood going everywhere. And I could see the forceps around Storie. And they were like absolutely yanking her out. And Tay was pushing and they're all like, there's a lot of commotion. There's a lot of shouting. They're like,
push! Like you've never pushed for your life.
Like, it's like... It was actually
like casualty.
Yeah, so you got like 2 doctors like holding Tay, like trying to make her like feel her bum, everything like push, and then another end they're like, yeah, that's it, come on, and they're like yanking his baby, and I can see something. I'm like, oh, like,
Mummy.
It's like I've got level 99 excitement because I'm about to meet a baby girl after all of these years, and I've got level 99 anxiety because I'm in a theatre, I can see a load of blood, Tay doesn't look quite right, and I'm like just scared. I know that sounds pathetic, but I'm scared. And
it's not pathetic at all. It's very normal.
So when they came out and the baby, I was like, my shock was like, what the hell? Like, I cannot believe that. So, and we were obviously both crying, and the baby's there. But I was also like, oh, come on, get her sorted now, get her stitched up. You know, I want to get out of here quick. So you're like, it was what the most wild, like to see her, like even now, a picture coming out, and they don't look like full, like red coloured. They look like grey, and they look slimy, and you're like, oh my God, and she's attached to the cord, and you're like, what the?
And you cut the cord. I forgot
cut the cord. It was wild, whole thing wild. So at that point, I was like, yeah, it was just, my brain was just frazzled.
Yeah, it had been a long few days. This is like, you know, this is Monday to Thursday.
Well, so yeah, even Sunday night we started getting hyped. I know that's probably not Sunday night to like Thursday morning, really. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we go back into a recovery room. Where you're
supposed to stay for 4 hours.
Stay for 4 hours just to check that everything's gone well.
Yeah. And you're under a lot of observations at this point.
Yeah, at that point it really kicks in. Now you're getting to see your baby. Tay looks like she's all well. And I'm like, oh my God. And that's how we're like, you know.
Taking pictures.
Texting everyone like the baby's here, like our family and that. And that was just wild. I could probably enjoy it then.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't believe it. She's here, and she was just doing all of her mouth stuff. That was incredible.
Yeah. And then basically, I think within about 40 minutes, you're constantly under observation. But I started having a really nice conversation with this girl called Kim who worked there, worked in the recovery bit, and we were chatting away and whatever. We got to know each other's names and stuff. And then I said, oh, Kim, I've just felt a couple of gushes of blood. I don't know whether you want to look. I don't know what to do, really. And she said, oh, okay, like I'll get the nurse to come around and have a look. Or she had a look first. I can't fully remember. Anyway, someone looked and they went, right, I'm just going to go back and get the doctor. And then literally within like a few minutes, there was like maybe 4 or 5 doctors at the end of the bed. And they'd started basically obviously explaining to me like they needed to put more, I started to give me more drugs and stuff. And they basically said, look, I think we're not happy with the, what's it called? Episotomy or something like that, which is basically where they've cut and stitched back up. We're not happy with that. It's bleeding too much. You look like you've lost too much blood. We know we need to take you back down to theatre. Because we're just not happy with how that's looking. And I was like, right, okay. So then they're like, the anaesthetic man, I don't know how you say it, he'd come back, and he, like who I'd seen earlier, and then there was a couple of other familiar faces and a couple of new faces, and they were like, right, we need to just let you know that whilst we're down there, if it just happened to be the uterus that's bleeding, we might have to perform a hysterectomy. You know, that's not what we want to do, but we do have to like consent you to it. So obviously I've just come out of giving birth. I'm like deluded anyway. And then literally I've just gave birth to my child, and they're like, you know, you're potentially going to have a hysterectomy, which is something that they would say to everybody, but I've never heard that before because I've never had a child before and this has never happened to me. So I'm thinking this is bizarre. So I'm like looking at Jack. Do you remember when I looked at you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like looked at Jack like, what's going on? And then I just started to cry because I was like, hysterectomy? What? And they were like, yeah, you know, obviously that's not like what we're going to do, not what we want to do and everything.
It's not lightly at all.
Yeah.
We just have to tell you
Yeah, we just have to say it, and you've got to sign this form basically. So I was like signing this form, and I was just like, what's going on? I only said there was a couple of gushes of blood. And basically they'd said, we think you've lost about 500 millilitres of blood, because I think what they do is they take the pad away that you're underneath and they go and weigh it to see how much blood you might have lost. I think that's right, but don't quote me, but that's just kind of what I remember. But could have made that up. And but what they hadn't seen is that basically that I saw when I got into theatre, so when I'd been rolled in, is they moved me from one bed to another, and the whole back of me, the whole bed was covered in blood, and I could see their faces looking at it like, oh. And so then they'd like added that up and they were like, oh, that wasn't accounted for. And basically by the end of it, I ended up losing 1,250 millilitres of blood, which is just less than 3 pints. So if you imagine a pint of milk, it's almost 3 pints of milk. And what they would consider, because I asked them what they would consider like a non-normal heavy bleeding, is 500 millilitres. So I was almost 3 times what they would consider too much of a blood loss. And they did some, I don't know what they did to check this, but basically I was very, very close to having a blood transfusion. But because I'd been taking iron tablets through my pregnancy, because I was low in iron, my iron levels were okay enough just for me not to have a blood transfusion. And so then I had is it the local anaesthetic, Jack, that I had?
Yeah.
I had a local anaesthetic where they obviously put the anaesthetic in my vagina, and they had to unstitch me and restitch me back up, because basically there was, I think, 3 tears at the top of my vagina that weren't accounted for, that hadn't been stitched or something like that. We don't actually fully know what's happened or why it happened, and not through us, but the hospital, because obviously they have to do this because it's their job. They're investigating it all at the minute to see like basically what went wrong. And we came back from the hospital with a letter and everything. But yeah, I had to get unstitched and stitched back up, which is why my recovery was a little bit more like, well, the first few days and everything was a bit more like, oh my gosh. And I had to stay in hospital overnight. But the care and everything, and I mean, we'll probably do another podcast to go through all of like the people that we met, and because we met a couple of GG members at the hospital as well that worked there.
GGs were the best. Well, do you know what?
Everybody was incredible, and this is something that we've said, and I feel like we could go way into this, but I feel like the battery's going to go on this equipment. But the people that we came into contact with at the Leicester Royal Infirmary, every single person was like 100 out of 100 at their job, like to such an elite level of care and like personability, if that's even a word, and just how they did their job. So professional, but so personable. And yeah, we met a couple of GG members who were just incredible. Especially a girl called Demi, who literally was a GG member, and we were discussing McDonald's in the recovery room. She was actually there for me. She was actually there with me in theatre. At that point, I didn't know she was a GG member, and she was, stood at the front of my vagina whilst I was in theatre getting unstitched and restitched back up. And then we came out, and then we were talking McDonald's, and then we got onto the GG, and I was like, no way. And she was like, yeah, I followed you for ages and whatnot, and we've still been in contact after. But she literally was expressing colostrum from my nipples.
What a woman.
Like a couple of hours after, and like teaching me things about feeding and just helping me. She like bathed me and washed me with soap. Oh, she's just incredible, and she's helped me so much. Like I've sent her so many messages since. And there was another GG member who I didn't see as much as Demi, but she actually got me into my delivery suite to begin with. And then she came twice to see and check on us and told us that she was part of the GG and everything. And she bought us loads of biscuits and cakes. And her name was Shanae. I hope I've said that right. And I posted a picture of her on my Instagram because we got a picture together. And I wish I'd got one with Demi as well. But all of the girls there were amazing.
Our midwife, Amelia.
I hope I've said her name right. But yeah, everyone was just incredible.
So yeah.
And even though it was everything that we didn't imagine, and that I wasn't one to hugely plan it anyway. I didn't really have like a whole birth plan and stuff. It was just very much like we're having a home birth and, see how it goes, quite laid back. It was still amazing. And even though, there was things that went wrong and stuff, it still was a very positive experience, I would say.
100%.
And yeah, we're very, very appreciative, and just the NHS are just incredible, aren't they? Obviously, we've been through the NHS with our home birth team, which we're going to do a whole different podcast on home birth and those kind of things, and speak more about our experience, like top to bottom with that. Even though we didn't actually end up getting the home birth, but oh my god, the team just couldn't have been more amazing.
Everyone's been so good,
and having all the service at home, and it's just insane. And we had the most amazing, we saw a few people, but our main midwife, Helena, she was just incredible. We've seen her today, And we're going to see her for the last time, I think, on Sunday to be discharged.
Yeah, which is pretty sad, actually.
Yeah, and it's crazy, you know, even though, I mean, this is probably normal procedure, but even though we didn't have the home birth, you know, still seeing the home birth team for all of our appointments and still taking care of us and still so personable with us and texting us to make sure we're okay.
I've messaged them like 100 times because...
Mr. Worrywarts over
I've
here.
been totally worried because obviously Tay had the...
blood loss.
When she had the blood loss, I was at the other end. I could see all the blood loss. I was left with Storie whilst they said, oh, we've got to take Tay back into theatre. And obviously I was like absolutely petrified. I was left with Storie like, oh my God, what's happening?
Yeah.
Like seeing blood loss. And I didn't really, you know, Helen has said as well, like sometimes when you have these kind of things in like your birth, like whatever kind of birth, sometimes it doesn't really kick in till like a week or two later.
Yeah, I think you experienced that, didn't you?
And at the time we were like, this has been the best birth. This has been the best birth ever.
I feel so like happy. We felt like that mainly because of the GG.
Well, it's because of the GG and because Storie was here.
Yeah.
So we were like elated. Everything was like, we were on cloud nine, heightened. We were just so happy. And then when we got home a few days later, and then it started to hit me that Tay had lost all this blood and what I, you know, had seen. And then because Tay was like stitched up and then was having like pains of the stitches. And then I was starting like creeping out that she's going to, basically the stitches come undone and she's going to lose a load of blood. I think it's called hemorrhaging. Basically,
I couldn't afford to lose any more blood, and Jack was scared that something was going to happen to me, and that then I was going to be a write-off.
Yeah,
basically.
And it started because they tell you things like, look, if you get like blood, like clots, if you get clumps of blood and stuff like that. So then, like Taylor goes, oh my God, Jack, I've got clumps of blood. So I'm like absolutely peak panicking, like, oh my God, I cannot take this. So we're like ringing the home birth team, they're flying over, and they're like, okay, it is clumps of blood, but it has to be like golf ball size clumps of blood to be a worry. And I'm like, oh. But my body didn't know that the clumps have to be that big. I just thought clumps is clumps and we're screwed.
Yeah, you would.
So my body's literally like the last week or so living on absolute edge because then Tay's like the wounds have been like infected. So
I got an infection.
Of the wounds days ago, and apparently
I'm back on antibiotics.
Obviously, it's not likely, but if the infection gets bad, it can then undo the stitches, and then that can make you bleed. So I've been like worried sick of this, and I don't know, it just sort of hit me really weird, really weird, where I've been like absolute on edge over
you're not normally an anxious person, but I would say you've been quite anxious.
Yeah,
but also they do say as well, like I think it's actually been harder for you than it has been for me, because when I was going through all of that, I was, you know, on all of the meds and, you know, not really with it. So I think you've seen everything in your like normal state. Yeah. And I've seen everything and felt everything in a very different state to you.
Definitely.
So
I think
it's been harder for you than it has been for me.
Yeah, which is weird. And also you think...
It's really weird.
It's a bit embarrassing because I have not done anything.
It's not embarrassing.
So, but this is what you think to yourself, like why you wouldn't say anything. You know, Joe, what, I'm feeling a bit weird about this because I haven't actually done anything. You've gone for it all. But... because you're seeing someone for like, you know, nearly a week going through that, and then it's going into theatre, which is a bit different, and then there's blood loss, and then you think that there's infections. You're like constantly like, you know, that's what. Yeah, I think
you've been in fight or flight mode for a week.
Well, for 2 weeks. Yeah. Because you're on day 12 now, and we had the 5 days before the baby was here where we were like,
yeah.
And it's actually really weird. So I finally feel, we had Helena today and she said, everything's looking good. Yeah. Relax. It's not likely. The stitches are going to be healed by now. It's like day 12. You're not going to have like a massive hemorrhage. So now, you know, I can relax.
At that point, when the midwife left you, I ain't looking after you anymore.
Yeah, I ain't looking after now. That's it. I'm done. I'm going to relax.
Checking out.
I've been on edge. I've been staying up late, like checking.
You've been on the phone at 1:30 to 111. This morning he woke up and he was like, "Oh, I've been so terrified, because you're having shooting pains. I've been on Google and thinking you're gonna bleed out." And I'm like, I'm just waking up normally, and he's just like sitting there.
I haven't slept.
I've been up all night.
I've just been watching, ready speed dial. Like if she bleeds, I woke
up at like half. I can't believe 1:30 or something the night before last, and he's on the phone to a GP from 111 having a full-blown conversation. I'm like,
because the fear was like we had the antibiotics ran out, and then Tay's stitches and wounds got more painful, over 3 days, started to get infected, all the symptoms infected, like how a wound would be if it's infected. And this was like on a Sunday. And I'm like, we can't just leave it. We need, even to be fair, give me some credit here. The midwife, home birth team were like, you need to get that sorted like today. Mm-hmm. That's why I was on the phone to 111 in the day, but they didn't call me till like 3 a.m. So I was obviously sat there waiting for the call. But we managed to get some antibiotics. She's back on them. She's looking good. So now I can relax.
Thank you.
So you have to speak into their darling.
Thank you.
So yeah, now I can relax. So yeah, that's just something that's very interesting. If anyone,
if anyone's made it to this point,
and yes, you made it to this point. The partners, can feel some weird shit.
Yeah,
it's weird.
I think you've spoke to a couple of people who've said,
all of my friends are like,
the birth is the worst.
Seeing your partner in, I wouldn't say I'm not going to say that birth's terrible because it. If it was quicker, it wouldn't have been terrible. But
no, and so many people have such a positive birth experience. Yeah. And I know that because I did all the hypnobirthing.
100%. And we would 100% have a birth.
And it still felt positive to me.
We're not put off by having another child, and we'd try the home birth again. We'd do all of that again. But a lot of my friends have all said when they see their partner in all of this stuff.
Yeah, it's not the birth that's the worst. It's seeing their partner.
They're like, it's awful, isn't it? You can't do anything.
Yeah.
You can do little bits, but if this just said it's just not.
No,
not easy as you think.
No.
So
we have to give the men some credit.
Give us some credit, God damn it! We are the ones that are stood there. Do you know what I mean?
And honestly, there could not have been a better birth partner. I mean, if you watched our just little reel on Instagram, Jack was breathing with me with all the. It's like he was having the contractions, and you were just the most amazing birthing partner.
Thank you.
And
you were the best birther.
And big birther. And all of the the run up to and everything, it just couldn't have wished for a better birth partner.
Yeah.
And also
I would rather if you'd not had to use forceps and lose blood, but you're not bad. You're 6 out of 10.
And also looking after me for the last 12 days, which has gone like insanely quick. It's been amazing. And that's we're just so grateful that our little girl is good and thriving and healthy, and it's just we're just on this really crazy new journey of being a mum and dad, and we're just going to wing it. Really, we're
going to wing it. And do you know what,
which is how we do everything.
It's been a bit of a journey, and obviously this was an IVF baby for us. There's probably a lot of couples that are on their IVF journey who have watched us for the last couple of years, and we've obviously got a baby. Is there anything we could say to them? I mean, there'll be a lot of people who are starting IVF, who are thinking of IVF, who obviously are trying for a baby and stuff. And I would just say it's just so worth it. And you know what? If we hadn't have gone down the route of IVF, which can seem so daunting, and I get it, but I really didn't experience something daunting when we did it. It was an amazing and very, very positive experience. But what I would say is just get on with it. If you've been putting off going and getting checks, or questioning if things don't feel quite right, like for you or on your side or your partner, because you're trying for a baby and nothing's happening, what I would say is we put so many things off at different points. Go get checked.
Just go and do it and get that first appointment out of the way. I had silly thoughts that felt really silly and feel silly now. They're not, but they kind of feel it like, versus something so meaningful. It's like, I just didn't even want to get my vagina out. And I know that's a lot of the reason why people don't go and get their smears and stuff, because you're like, oh God, this is embarrassing. But honestly, to get your baby at the end of it and to be pregnant. And
guys as well, you got to do the sperm test. It can be awkward. You got to
Yeah, it's
cheers
just
into a cup and race down to the
it
doctors.
is. Of course, it is. It's a little bit more invasive than not doing it,
but
it's so worth it. And what I would say is, just if you want a baby, you and your partner are ready for a baby, or you're ready for a baby on your own, and you might be using a sperm donor. I don't know your personal situation, but I would say just make a start with it, because it's not a short process by any means, but it's also not the longest process. And having the baby in your arms is...
We were very fearful of IVF, and actually out of all of the tests and the IUI and everything, the IVF was actually, we felt most comfortable, which we were absolutely terrified of.
And we'll have to do IVF for any children that we want, because our doctor said we wouldn't get pregnant naturally. I mean, God willing, something could change, but, with where we currently were, and if the checks were still the same, we wouldn't be able to have a baby naturally. So we will have to have, presumably IVF every time. And for me, that is not a daunting thing. I'm like, let's go.
We've been lucky that the IVF actually worked first time.
Yes.
So that could be,
but it doesn't.
We don't know the experience of that not working again and again.
We have said that before. That's something that's very important to mention. Actually, is that it obviously is a positive experience for me, because I had it the once. We did IUI before, and that failed, but we did IVF only once, and it worked. But for people who've been doing it again and again, I totally understand why it would not feel like a positive experience, and it would be very daunting. So we have been very, very lucky and blessed in that sense.
Yeah. But God bless you all, and good luck on that.
And we'll see you in episode 11.
Yeah, thank you very much. We did it just under an hour. Woo. So we love you all. And we're actually going to upload a couple of YouTube videos as well. We'll upload YouTube videos of Storie, how we're getting on, a little bit of our routine. Mm-hmm. So,
love you.
Thank you very much. Love you.
Bye.